Hey, can you hear me?
Loud and clear, sir.
Cool, cool, cool. And just for the attendees, thank you for tuning in for today's session. And I'll just give a brief introduction about Pawel, um, who's a speaker for today's virtual session on OneLake. Pawel has an extensive experience on data engineering, analytics, and big data. And if I'm correct, he's also the founder of original Polish SQL Server user group, now known as Data Community Poland. Um, I often see him focusing on community engagement as well. And additionally, I see him curating the whole popular monthly newsletter called Azure Data and Power BI News as well. So it's a must read for anyone who's interested in the data tech. Um, and today is going to give us the inside look at OneLake, the unified storage system, um, and the core of the Microsoft Fabric. So before I just pass on this virtual mic to Pavel, I just want to add one last thing. You guys can use chat for the questions, be interactive. Um, and for the non-session topics, we can anytime use discussion boards in the group. With that, I'll just give a warm welcome to Pavel. Stage is all yours.
Thank you very much. Let me try to share my screen. And if you could just confirm that everything is fine on your side and you see it.
Yep, I can see it.
Okay, let me just reposition my windows on the second monitor and I should be good. Okay, so Hello, Norway, and not only Norway. I think there are folks from other sides of the world. So good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this session on OneLake, one of the key foundations of Microsoft Fabric. The purpose of this session is actually to give you an overview of OneLake, what it is, how organizations and different personas working with data and analytics can benefit from OneLake. As Puneet said, I'm Pawel Potasinski, Senior Program Manager on the Microsoft Fabric community team. So that's why I'm doing lots of stuff related to community, also evangelizing people and giving sessions, participating in different events and community meetings. In the past, I used to be a community leader in Poland. I still am active in the community, not just in Poland, but worldwide. And some of you might be speakers at SQL Day in Poland. So I actually was one of the founder of this event. Also, I was an MVP historically on SQL Server and Data Platform, but now I'm at Microsoft, so no longer an MVP. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and Twitter. As Puneet said, there's a newsletter I run on a monthly basis. The next one should actually appear this week, hopefully. So yes, I curate some news and links that might be useful for you. So if you find it useful, just see it on my LinkedIn. I will also give you a link to this newsletter at the very last slide of my presentation. So before we go into OneLake, let's do a brief overview of what Microsoft Fabric is for those of you who are not that much in Fabric. So Fabric is a unified platform for analytics. Actually, this platform provides everything an organization needs for data analytics, from data integration and data lake to the business user working with Office. So it ends up, actually, it doesn't end up on Power BI. It goes beyond Power BI. You might heard about Data Activator. That's one of the experiences of Microsoft Fabric. So it includes data integration, data engineering, probably the most interesting for you, data warehousing, data science, real-time analytics, business intelligence in form of Power BI, and going from insights to action in which is data activator. So those are seven experiences, how we call them, of Microsoft Fabric. But all those experiences are backed by a single storage approach, which is OneLake. Fabric is also delivered as a single software as a service product, and it provides automatic integration and optimization, common architecture, central management, and the same user interface for all roles and workloads in the analytical project. So it reminds very much how we do it in Microsoft Office, where people use Excel and PowerPoint for different purposes, but yet some of the features are common, like, for example, spell checking, copying and pasting, text formatting, etc. So we want to make this the same step for people doing analytics as we did for business users with Microsoft Office. So the similar effect. So what is an important message here? Every analytics workload in Fabric works seamlessly with OneLake, which I will be presenting today. We want to minimize data management time and effort by eliminating data duplication. That's the major assumption when it comes to OneLake. To talk about OneLake, let's start with why. Why did we implement OneLake in Fabric? So first, many of our customers invested in data lakes. They use data lakes to land all data and break down silos by having one central place to store data with simplified management, governance, and data discovery. You probably noticed that the data lakes or storages became quite a common part of analytical architecture when it comes to implementations in the cloud. You run a storage, then you load the data in the storage, and then it doesn't really matter if you run lakehouse or data warehouse on top of that. This data storage is the landing zone for your data. So that's a common pattern, and lots of companies invested in it. But getting to the desired state is not that simple, it's not that easy, because analytics with data lakes is a lot like file sharing prior to OneDrive. So you have to build a file sharing solution in terms of analytics once you create all those storages and folder structures. Services like OneDrive actually are changing the game by providing software as a service solution for file sharing. So we wanted OneLake to be such a game changer for analytics. So we want OneLake to be OneDrive for your data that you use for analytics. The reality without OneLake is quite difficult, because even though in the cloud you don't have to buy servers but rather storage accounts, it is still complicated to coordinate how different teams work with data in the lake. And when the data mesh operational mode comes to the game, you typically end up with a bunch of data lakes owned and managed by different teams, different people, making data reuse and exchange in the organization a complex task with lots of data duplication and movement on the way. I will show that in a second. Well, that's actually quite normal. So you end up with data silos. Each team or department has their own data lake or storage account, with common data being copied among different parts of organization. Most users and sorry, most users and and applications are actually not able to access the data in the data lakes directly, and they go through the layers, like, for example, data marts, cubes, I know, Power BI data sets, you name them. And building those layers involves data movement, because you have to sync the data between the layers, between data lake and those layers serving data. Now, it's not the only problem, because you also need to create copies of data when you want to reuse the data between different departments, different business areas. And that's another story of having multiple copies of the same data. And then you end up with lots of copies out of sync, and you have to build the solutions that will keep the data updated in every place. Plus, you have to govern the data, because you need to know that the same data sits in many different places in the organization. So it's a complex task. So that's why we introduced OneLake in Microsoft Fabric. OneLake aims to provide you a data lake as a service without needing to build it yourself. So just like you have OneDrive for all your documents, now you have OneLake for all your data. Let's dive into more details on how OneLake becomes OneDrive for your data by going through its key concepts. There are 4 key concepts. First, the principles of OneLake, then the principle of one copy, one security, which is a bit of roadmap. It's not yet there. Keep in mind, Fabric is still in public preview. And then there is OneLake Data Hub, central place for discovery of your data. So let's start with OneLake. How OneLake provides you with a single data lake for the entire organization. That's number 1. So for every Fabric tenant, you will always have exactly one OneLake. Not 2, no 0, just 1. There's no infrastructure to set up or manage. You just have your one data lake present. Now, the concept of a tenant is actually well known from Power BI. It's a unique benefit of having software as a service solution, and it allows us to automatically provide single management and governance boundary for the entire organization, which is ultimately under the control of a tenant admin. So now you have Fabric admin instead of Power BI admin, actually. The admin sets this initial boundary, and any data which lands in OneLake will automatically take part in out-of-the-box data governance, such as data lineage, data protection, certification, things that you know from Power BI. All data is ultimately under the control of tenant admin. However, you may actually manage data by assigning different business groups administrators, and they can work independently without going through a central gatekeeper. Now, OneLake enables distributed ownership through workspaces, also well known from Power BI. Different workspaces allow different parts of the organization to work independently while still contributing to the same data lake. So again, the same data lake, the same storage layer, but people contribute to different workspaces having different data items. Now, creating a workspace is very light. You just need create workspace, name it, decide which capacity will back the workspace, and that's it. So it's not a complex process. Also, it inherits the rules set by tenant admin, so there is no need to re-implement the same governance or spend time to get different resources to talk to each other. So again, this is not only central management, but also kind of delegation. You might be thinking that your organization can't just have one data lake because you are in multiple countries and you have requirements that data must reside in those countries. So OneLake covers this scenario by spanning the globe as well. Different workspaces can reside in different regions. This means that any data in those workspaces will also reside in those countries. OneLake is built on top Azure Data Lake Store Generation 2, and under the covers, it may use multiple storage accounts in different regions. However, OneLake will virtualize them, so you will see one logical data lake. That's how it works. In OneLake, all data comes as part of Fabric data item. So many data items are pre-wired to store their data in OneLake using open file formats. And that's also an important part of the story because you don't want to be closed in this ecosystem. You don't want to put your data in Fabric and then be locked down to Microsoft Fabric and not being able to access with any other tool or platform. So what is a data item? Actually, if you currently use Power BI, you know one of them. It's Power BI dataset, but there are more. Fabric brings several new data items. So you will see, for example, fully transactional data warehouse for T-SQL developers, Lakehouse for data engineers and data scientists. The Lakehouse actually provides most lake-like experience for anyone used to working with storage today, but it also provides much more. And no matter which item you start with, they will all store their data in OneLake, similarly how Word, Excel, and PowerPoint save their documents to OneDrive. So it's an analogy to Microsoft Office. If you look at how this data is stored in OneLake, you are not going to see data items and workspaces. You will see files and folders just like you would see them in data lake today. All workspaces are going to be folders. Each data item will be a folder too, and the data will be stored in open formats. Delta is the preferred storage format for us. And we picked Delta as the format because we don't want to create proprietary file formats for Fabric. We want OneLake and the data stored in OneLake to be open and make it possible for people to access the data in OneLake using different platforms, third parties, etc. Even our data warehouse, which is interesting, will have natively data stored in the Delta format. While Fabric data items will standardize on Delta for tabular data, OneLake is still a data lake. So you may bring any type of file into OneLake, and you can work with structured and unstructured data with binaries, etc. Yeah, so again, we want this to be open for integration with other platforms, not just enclosed to Microsoft. I mentioned that OneLake is built on top of foundation of ADLS Gen 2. And it also supports ADLS Gen 2 APIs and SDKs, which means that you can easily integrate OneLake with existing ADLS applications. For example, if you've been using Azure Databricks, you can go against OneLake just like you used to do it versus storage accounts ADLS Gen 2. For these applications, Fabric tenants will appear as one big storage account with different workspaces appearing as different containers with their data organized into folders. So nothing very surprising here. The underlying physical storage is virtualized, so OneLake ensures the proper scale and performance. And people testing OneLake mention very often that the performance of OneLake is definitely one of its key advantages. You may check it for yourself, actually. In Fabric, different business groups can work independently with the same data lake without the overhead of managing different storage resources. If needed, they implement the popular data mesh pattern more efficiently than they could before. OneLake takes this even further with the introduction of domains as a first-class concept. It's also a concept for Power BI. You may see this in Power BI as well. A single business domain may have multiple workspaces. So you have a tenant, then you have domains, and then in domains you have workspaces. And it can align to teams or projects or business areas. So for example, here we have 3 domains: sales, marketing, and finance, with some workspaces in them. A domain is a way of logically grouping together all the data in an organization that is relevant to an area or field, right? So sales, marketing, finance, for example. Domain also provide a management boundary between tenant and workspace. So you can have admins to have more granular control over multiple workspaces. And it's also a way to simplify discovery and consumption of data across the entire organization. So you will see in my last demo how you can easily locate the data for a specific domain. So it's time for my first demo. Keep your fingers crossed. It's live. I'm not cheating here. There's no video. So public preview. Let's hope it all works. So let's start with Fabric user interface. If you're not familiar with Fabric, the difference between Fabric and Power BI is located here. Bottom left corner, if you see the Power BI icon, actually it's a switcher where you can click and switch between different experiences, then you are in Fabric. If you have Power BI tenant, enabling Fabric as an admin is just a matter of going to admin portal and selecting the Microsoft Fabric preview option, and then you should be good to go. But this session is not about enabling Fabric. I assume that you will manage, setting up the whole environment. We will see how OneLake works in Fabric. So let's start with creating a workspace. I mentioned that workspace is this logical structure for keeping your files and data items. So let's create a new workspace. Let's call it demo. The important part of this is here. If you click advanced, you need to select one of those sections. Either you select trial, which is based on trial capacity, or you select premium capacity if you have P capacity from Power BI, or you can select Fabric capacity, which is a capacity created in Azure. So you can have you can select from 3 options. I will select trial because I have my trial started. So 60-day trial. Hopefully my workspace is done. So now, if that would be the first workspace in my tenant, when I click on the new, which allows me to create items like reports, data sets, etc., you will see this show all option that will take you to the create window, which allows you to create any artifact, any item of Fabric. So you see that those items are actually divided into experiences. For example, Lakehouse sits in data engineering. You could also go via selector of experience, go to data engineering, and then you have items specific for data engineering. So let me start by creating a lakehouse. If that would be the first workspace in my tenant, creating a lakehouse would start my OneLake, would create OneLake for my tenant. So let me just name it lakehouse. Yes, I used this name a lot before. So it's as simple as that. I create a data lake for me, and also put a lakehouse on top of this data lake. So OneLake exists in this moment, no infrastructure, nothing to set up, right? And now I can start working with data. So I will not focus on data integration part of Fabric, no pipelines, no data flows Gen 2. I will just simply upload some data just to show you how OneLake, how this data is visible in OneLake. So let me create maybe a subfolder in the files section of my lakehouse. Let me just call it whatever, payment types. So notice that in the lakehouse, there are two sections, tables and files. Files is so-called unmanaged area of the lakehouse. So you can put anything there. In tables, you will have data stored in tabular formats like Delta or Parquet. We prefer Parquet. We prefer Delta because Delta format tables backed by Delta format will be visible for all the great mechanisms in Fabric, for example, for direct late mode. So I will upload a single file to this newly created folder. Let me just go and select one CSV file. This is not a big file, but it's not about big data here. And now for data engineers, when you have your data in the files section, you can start playing as normally. So you can immediately start a new notebook that will be attached to this lakehouse, and you can work with both tables and files sections of your lakehouse. So for example, if I want to see the data that I have just uploaded, my CSV file, there's a simple operation of dragging and dropping my file on the notebook and just running the code cell, which is brilliant way to start with data engineering in Fabric. Now the session for the notebook starts within a couple of seconds. Should be like 10 seconds maybe. You see 9 seconds to start the session, which is by far better result than in any platform that you have in Azure. And you can see the content of the files. Also, you could go to the lakehouse itself, and by simply clicking on the file, you can also check the content of the file. Now, there is a quick way of making this file a table. So I can upload the data that sits in the CSV file to a table just by right-clicking on this file and selecting option Load to Tables, New Table. I will call it payment type, just like it is called. Let's load the data. Now this interface has changed since I presented this last time, so there are some surprises still in those demos. Even if those demos are super simple, it's not like it was before. But let's hope it works. Okay, yeah, I should have my table in a second. Any confirmation? Let's refresh. Yeah, payment type is here, right? So you see there's there's raw data loaded into files, and there's table. And now the big part of this is that Lakehouse has two views. One is just a Lakehouse, so you have an overview of tables and files, but also you can switch to SQL endpoint view, where you can start playing with T-SQL and query the data that sits in your table. So once I created a table, I can just spin up a new table, a new select statement, just to make sure that my table is here and the content is the same as in the CSV file. So where is my result? Let's run it again. Yeah, so you can see the results, right? It's just like a table in the warehouse. So you can actually go and immediately start playing with SQL, join tables, etc. So now the big part, how this thing, files and tables, how they look from the storage perspective. So to see that, actually, let's go and connect to OneLake using OneLake File Explorer, which is very similar to OneDrive client that you use in Windows. So you can download OneLake File Explorer, install it on your laptop, and you will see this little position here, OneLake Microsoft. And this is the structure of my OneLake workspaces represented by folders. Now you don't see the demo workspace because I need to sync from OneLake to see the newly created workspace. So you can see now demo is here. And if I go into this, I see my lakehouse. So the naming of the folders, the naming convention of folders is simple. It's the name of the object and then its class. So I have lakehouse called lakehouse. That's why it's lakehouse.lakehouse. In this folder, you can see actually both files and tables, and I can see my payment types folder with payment type CSV file, as well as I can go to tables and verify that my payment type is stored as delta format, so parquet file plus delta log, as expected. Now, the big part of this client is also that you can play with files and folders just like you normally do with OneDrive. So for example, if I want to upload some data, let's say this nice fabric icon, I can just copy that. Come on, copy. Go back to my demo, Lakehouse files, and paste it here. How does it look from the web user interface perspective? If I go back to my Lakehouse to files section, hey, there is a new file. So I just uploaded new data, and I can even preview the newly uploaded file here. So this is how you can easily upload the data from your client, from your laptop, servers, whatever, to OneLake, just by connecting using OneLake File Explorer. But that's not the only way. You can also use traditional ways. I mentioned that it's all based on ADLS Gen 2. So you can connect to OneLake just like it's just like to normal storage. So here I have just a regular Azure Storage Explorer, and I'm connected to one of the workspaces, and it's visible just like a blob container, right? So this specific container contains data warehouse and the lakehouse. Those two objects have been created by creating some data flows Gen 2. It's still public preview, so there are some additional objects being created. But here, those folders represent a real lakehouse and real data warehouse. In fact, you can read the name of the workspace here. It's demo dash fabric. It's demo dash fabric dash data warehouse. So let me find this workspace for you in my Fabric user interface. Go to workspaces, and there is this demo fabric dash data warehouse. If I go here, all the objects that I had visible in Storage Explorer are here. So I have my warehouse, which is here, and also I have my lakehouse. Those two objects were visible because those are data items. They store data. They are visible as folders in the file structure in OneLake. So you can see that it's possible to connect using traditional tools like Azure Storage Explorer, that's not all, because you can also have Databricks in place, right? So how to use Databricks to access OneLake? Nothing very special, just like you normally use it with your storage with your Azure's data lake store Gen 2. So how to actually find those paths that lead to specific folders or files in OneLake? You go to your workspace. For example, I have Direct Lake workspace here, and I go to my lakehouse because that's where I keep my files, and that's the structure which I will be using with Databricks. That's my data lake. And I have, for example, this products folder with products CSV file. If I right click on anything, folder, file, whatever, there's an option called properties. And here you can find ABFS path and also URL. So you can actually copy that to your Databricks notebook and work with it just like it was in the classic storage. So that's how actually I'm going to run this code. So I will just set the location of a single CSV file, product CSV, which is stored in one of my lakehouses in Fabric, and then I will try to read this data to a data frame and show some example data on the screen. That's all. But it just shows you how you can access the files and folders that are stored in OneLake. Now the way I do it in Databricks is a bit specific, and I have to explain that just to be 100% clear and honest. You notice that I've never set up any kind of authentication. So I'm using constantly my Azure Active Directory account, user account, to connect to the files and folders that sit in OneLake. So how it's done in Databricks, I set up my cluster to use the advanced option called credential pass-through. So this is what you need to set up in order to pass through your credentials as a user to OneLake. And you, of course, you need to be a user who has access to specific data items, workspaces, etc. in Fabric. But that's easy because all you have to specify is just the role that your user has in workspace. So workspace is this granularity of control. Right now, it's still public preview. So I hope that shows you that it's an open ecosystem. Now let's move to the geographically dispersed OneLake. So what if I have a requirement to have data stored in different countries? So I have two workspaces created for the purpose of this part of demo. One is called North Central US to suggest where the data is located. The other one is called West US 2. Now, if I go to workspace settings, premium, you will see that the first workspace is located is backed by capacity that sits in North Central US. That's the capacity created in Azure. It's not Power BI capacity, it's F capacity that was created in Azure. And the other one is, of course, based on the capacity created in West US. But still, it is visible. Both those workspaces are visible in a single OneLake, single data lake, virtualized data lake. So how does it look from Azure perspective? Notice here, I just have two resources created in a resource group in Azure, Fabric capacities. So whenever you want to create Fabric capacity in Azure, you need Azure subscription, and you need to create Fabric capacity F something. Now the good thing about Fabric capacity in Azure is that it can be paused and resumed. So you can save money if your system, if your Fabric users do not require 24/7 access. right? So here you can select size. The size determines how much it costs, right? But again, you select here where the data will be stored physically in OneLake. So you can have OneLake that sits on top of different Azure regions and store data physically in different Azure regions. But still, when you switch to File Explorer or anything that accesses OneLake, you will see just a bunch of folders, right? Now, the tricky part is how to check where the specific data item is being stored. So hint here is if you go and create a shortcut, there will be that will be visible. I will show you that in my next demo. Switching back to slides. I hope everything is clear so far. Let me know if there are any questions. Awaiting my answer. Let me switch to Q&A, but I don't see any questions. Okay, there will be a Q&A section at the end of this presentation, so I need to speed up probably. So now let's move to the concept of one copy. I mentioned that you are forced to copy data across lakes, and that creates silos, and that creates copies of data. So with one copy concept, we aim to get the most value possible out of a single copy of data without movement or duplication. And that's the purpose of this one copy statement, one copy pillar of OneLake. So let's go back and look at different domains of our organization in OneLake. Large organization will typically have lots of data domains with different data owners. So if we zoom out, we can see that all those domains in OneLake have some dependencies. For example, shared dimensions, right? And that is because a single data item needs to span across multiple domains. So for example, we want typically to have a single definition of customer, a single definition of a product as a part of data management and governance, right? So shortcuts provide a way to actually virtualize data as it sits in a single place without data movement, data duplication, or changing the ownership of data. Let's zoom back and let's look how it works. So a shortcut is actually a symbolic link. You may consider it just like a shortcut in an operating system. You create a shortcut, but the file is somewhere else. Physically is not there, right? So so today, if you have tables in data warehouse which you want to make visible to make available alongside other tables or files in a lakehouse, you will need to copy that data out of warehouse. And with OneLake, you can simply create a shortcut in the lakehouse pointing to this table that sits in the warehouse. And it would look just like you would have data physically copied in the lakehouse, but you are not copying anything, right? And since you didn't copy it, when the data is updated in the warehouse, changes are automatically reflected in the lakehouse. You can also use shortcuts to consolidate data across workspaces and domains without changing the ownership of the data. In this example, workspace B. The workspace B still owns the data. They still have ultimate control over who can access it and how it stays up to date, right? But it can be shared with other folks working with workspace A. That's not all. You can also use shortcuts to virtualize existing ADLS Gen 2 storage accounts or Amazon S3 buckets. And you can have those storages visible in OneLake, just like they were sitting there physically in OneLake. Now, the difference between those two is that for Amazon S3, right now we implement read-only access. For Azure storage accounts, ADLS Gen 2, we implement both ways, so read-write. Yeah, so GCP storages will be probably supported by GA, let's say. I'm not sure, but let's hope. So what is important? All data is mapped in the same unified namespace and can be accessed using the same ADLS Gen2 API, even if it's coming from S3. Imagine you can connect to Amazon S3 buckets using Azure Storage Explorer. Funny thing. Here are different examples of shortcuts created in a single lakehouse. So you can also note that you can also create shortcuts in different data items, not just lakehouses, but also KQL databases, for example. Now, let's create some shortcuts to show you how it works. So I was here, but let me move to my to my Fabric user interface. So let me move back to the demo workspace I created. And I remind you, I have a lakehouse and I created a table called payment type, which is stored here. Now, let's assume that I know that somebody in my company that used the same tenant of Fabric already implemented some table that is useful along with this payment type table. What I can do is I can click on tables, create a new shortcut, select Microsoft OneLake, and this is the magical part. If you ask where to find location of data item, look here, capacity region. That's not visible anywhere else. I hope we change it, but right now it's only here. So I can select, for example, my direct lake demo lakehouse. I know that this table that I require is there. And let's click next. And I can create a shortcut to both tables and files sections. And I select trip table already created in another lakehouse. And within seconds, because there is no copying of data, this trip table is 1.5 billion rows, just for the records. So there was no copy for sure. And you can see that I have two tables. So now I can go to the SQL endpoint and try to use my, let's refresh those tables. Something went wrong. Happens. Let's go back to Lakehouse. I hope everything is fine here. Come on, show yourself. Oh, it's too quick, maybe. Yeah, so I have two tables, trip and payment type. And notice that I can also preview the data in the trip table, hopefully. I hope it does not do select star from everything. Yeah, so the preview is here. The table that sits in another lakehouse, another part of my Fabric tenant. So now I can go and query the data. If I know that those two tables are somehow related, I can write a select statement from payment type table. Let's call it P. And let's just do inner join with my trip table called T on. Let's see what's the table name, P. Now the IntelliSense is still in progress, so you can suffer a lot writing here. But hey, you can connect to the SQL endpoint using your favorite SQL tools like SQL Server Management Studio. I believe trip has different column payment type key. Yeah. So let's just go and select several columns, P, name, and let's just count star. Let's just count the number of trips that occurred using and that were paid with different payment methods. And let's just group the data by payment type name. That's an awful SQL, but hey, I just need to show you that it works and that it connects data sitting in two different places of my OneLake and owned by two different teams, hopefully. again, this is big data. This is 1.5 billion rows, and I can see that it actually did the thing. So that's a big thing, how you can use data without copying them from one place to another. You can benefit from having OneLake and having this open interface and shortcuts that can reach out to different lake houses, warehouses, whatever. Another way to create a shortcut. Let me switch back to my lakehouse. Lakehouse. And let's create a shortcut in the files section this time to ADLS Gen 2. Now, this is a tricky part. I just need to switch for a second to here. So I'm in Azure portal, and I see details of some storage accounts, as you can see. So if I go to the endpoints, I will just grab my my data lake storage primary endpoint. That's what is needed if I want to create a shortcut to external storage. And that's it. I already created connection for this storage, so there's no need to create new. And when I click next, I'm asked about the container and the shortcut name. So let's call it bronze, because I know there is a bronze layer for the data lake that I've been using with Azure Synapse Analytics in the past. And I know that there is bronze container here, and I just created it. And now the magical part happens, because I see the folders that sit in this specific container of Azure Data Lake Storage sitting in Azure, not in Fabric. And again, I didn't copy anything, because this data also takes several gigabytes. And if you want to verify if those folders are accurate, let's just switch back to my storage and see the list of containers. If I go to bronze, the same list of folders, and I can see them, and I can work on them as data engineer. I can make them tables. I can do cleansing. I can do data engineering stuff, data science stuff on top of this data, as it was in OneLake. It is in OneLake virtually. So I hope this makes shortcut very sexy feature of OneLake for you. And two more things. Looking at the roadmap, we are in active development, again, public preview. So one security which I am just briefly scratch here is the concept that is coming to Fabric, hopefully before GA, because that's one of the crucial parts of Fabric. So one security will bring a shared universal security model, which you will define in OneLake. Right now, you define the access level for the users based on role-based access control on the workspace. But this will be probably evolving over time. So security will live with the data rather than living downstream in the serving or presentation layers. So we want data to be secure from the moment it lands in OneLake. So you will not need to provide necessary security features at Lake itself, because there will be just one central security mechanism for that. Now, more granular security, of course, will need to be set up on different levels of serving data. Like, for example, row level security you will have to set up on your data warehouse or whatever you will use for serving data, or data sets in Power BI. Security defined in OneLake will be automatically enforced by all engines. So once you set anything in OneLake, everything will propagate to data engineering, data warehousing, business analysts working with Power BI and creating reports, etc. So even this will propagate to users using non-Fabric engines to access this data. So again, stay tuned. I would recommend watching closely Fabric blog, because we present monthly updates. The last one contained about 60 new features and improvements, so we constantly evolve this. Now, the last part of the story is about OneLake Data Hub. This is a concept that actually is a single location in Fabric UI user interface where users can discover, manage, and reuse data. So you can, as a user, you can easily browse data by its workspace, access metadata of data items like description, endorsement, sensitivity label, things that you know from Power BI as well. Users also can narrow the view of data items to specific domain. So you can filter by domain. If you when you see the data item list, you are able to search, filter, and sort the items to discover the data that you're looking for easier. Now the granularity still may require some improvements, but again, this is the first step. Users also can switch between the list view and lineage view, so you can immediately switch to the lineage view to see the dependencies between different data items. For example, going from lakehouse to data sets, and maybe with some data integration part somewhere in between. Again, stay tuned. This OneLake Data Hub will evolve in the future. I will just showcase this briefly, how it looks right now, just to give you some good feeling about how this look. Now, here you can notice that I have some domains created, actually 2 domains, finance and transport. So I can narrow the view to a single domain. For example, for finance domain, I have this list of items sitting in specific two specific workspaces. So I can immediately find the list of workspaces that are assigned to the specific domain, and I can select specific data items that store data. Again, I can switch to the lineage view, for example, by clicking on the options of a lakehouse. I can view lineage for this specific lakehouse and see how the data flows, right? Okay. I mentioned that you can filter. So when you go back to OneLake Data Hub, you can filter by the name. So for example, let's look for objects that have finance in the name. Here you go, finance lakehouse and associated objects. You can filter also by the type of the data item. So that's it for the moment. Also, you can watch for endorsed data, so certified, promoted data items in your organization. It's not. I know it's not that much, but it's a good beginning to make data discovery easier for people. So again, this will evolve. Watch some news about how OneLake Data Hub evolves in the future. So with that, I think I have just one slide for you to give you some call to action, right? I bolded several bullets that I normally recommend to people who want to start with Fabric or learn Fabric quickly. So first, if you haven't so far tried the product, there is a 60-day trial. Actually, it's even longer. No credit card required. The only thing that is required is you have to spin up the tenant. No Azure subscription is required if you ask. Second, join the Fabric community. That's a website that is actually backed by Power BI community site. It's extended to other experiences like Synapse data engineering, data factory, etc. So you can go and discuss your discoveries with other folks from community, with Microsoft people, with PMs sitting behind the product as well. And last but not least, vote and also submit your ideas how we can improve the products. There is this single place you can go, aka.ms/fabric ideas. We are open to hear your thoughts on what should be different, what should work differently in Fabric, what should be implemented in first place. And if you want to learn Fabric, there's no better way than go to Microsoft Learn. There's a free learning path going from 0 to some level of understanding of Fabric. Plus, we have four tutorials prepared in the documentation. There's a Lakehouse, Data Warehouse, Real-Time Analytics, and Data Science tutorial. So you can pick whichever you are interested the most and check it for yourself. There are a bunch of different resources on Fabric going here and there every single day. If you, for example, if you are looking for a way how to connect from Power BI desktop because you're a Power BI user, you can check for the latest blog post from Mark Levyweit, one of the MVPs. But I also encourage you to go and visit Fabric blog. I publish every single month. I publish the list of blogs from MVPs from all over the world about Fabric. Lots of interesting stuff covered, lots of interesting video series there. Make sure you don't miss opportunity to learn from people who were sitting in the private preview for half a year or more. That's how we actually started interaction with our most famous community people. So that's it from my side. Streaming analytics will be available in Fabric. I believe if you're asking about, probably you're asking about streaming in notebooks or Spark experience. I have no idea if it's present right now. If you can drop me an email, I mean, I will leave an email in the chat window. I will ask the right PM on my team if it's there or if there is a plan to go with this. But keep in mind that we have a dedicated experience called real-time analytics for streaming things. So real-time analytics is not just about custom databases. We have objects like event streams, which can easily consume data coming from different streaming data sources like event hubs, for example. So you can check it out as an option. Any other questions? No questions means that I was either too bad or
No, you're spot on.
or everyone was familiar with OneLake and everything is clear.
I
Which is
might
good,
have
which is good.
something. Yeah, I might have something which
Sure.
I'm usually hearing from users when I'm interacting with them. So what I often see when you create shortcuts, there are only two places to create it. One is Lakehouse, another one is KQL databases.
Mhm.
But often the people comes to me and ask me, okay, I have like data warehouse. Can I just create shortcut directly in a data warehouse instead of
So
going in a one
so
lake
for
or lake
that,
data?
you can go and play differently because let me go to my data warehouse. So I have a warehouse here called Worldwide Importers DW, but I also have a lakehouse, Worldwide Importers Lakehouse. Let's see if I have a lakehouse here. If I have it, if I have tables here. So I have payment type final, for example. That's the name of the table. If I go back to my warehouse, let me try to write a new query. Worldwide, okay. Let's go by three-part name. So that was Worldwide Importers Lakehouse dot dbo dot payment type final. That's it. So different approaches. Yes, for accessing Lakehouse tables, not files, you have a mechanism of three-part names, like just like you normally go with different databases in SQL, right?
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is the missing part in Azure Synapse Analytics. Don't quote me on that.
But can we use this like three-part name for different workspace as well, or just is confined in?
It has, I believe it has to sit in the same workspace.
Okay.
Because if you look at the if you look at the workspaces from the server perspective, when you connect to SQL endpoints, they have different server names, right? So maybe you could go with four-part name, but that's risky. Question, I see hands up.
Yep. We have unmute you. Let me. Yep. I think we have given you mic, Alberto. We did.
Alberto, you have to unmute. Yeah, that's better.
No? Well,
Yeah.
we cannot write in the chat now. I think because the meeting is more than 1 hour, the chat is closed and the question are closed. One of my question: what is the difference if you buy from the premium Power BI and on the other hand you buy from the Fabric capacity? You told something that
Functionally,
can
there's no difference. Now let me go back to the interface where I created new capacity. Now, if you look here, there is a trick here. There is a cutoff level of capacities here, F64. Actually, F64 is the level of trial capacity. That's what you get from Microsoft for 60 days. F64, which is around P1 in Power BI. Basically, it's the same, right? So from the functional perspective, P capacities and F capacities are the same. Now, F capacities created in Azure can be paused. So you can pause and resume them, just like you do with embedded Power BI capacities. And also keep in mind that for capacities lower than F64, you still need Power BI licenses, just like you need licenses for creators that work with Power BI items in premium Power BI. Right?
This is another
but
team
functionally,
with another budget.
it's no difference. It's no difference.
Okay.
Actually, you might notice that if you have P1 capacity and you have Power BI tenant existing, there's if your admin haven't done any activity in admin settings related to Fabric in the last 2 months, we enabled Fabric by default for the users. So they may start clicking and creating lakehouses, anything they keep on their mind, having only P capacity. So again, P capacities, they are promoted to Fabric capacities, right?
Okay.
And they will handle different workloads, not just Power BI.
Another question: what is the price of OneLake? Because the only that I found is
That's a good
similar
question.
to the cost of ADLS. Okay.
So
I will go to my boss and I will tell it's similar.
Yeah, so there is a blog post on that. I love when things go as expected. I don't know if it's uncategorized, maybe not. Let me just find it using search. Fabric blog. Here we go. Boom. Current scenarios. Extended. Yeah. Announcing Microsoft Fabric. Let me paste the link for you in the chat window. Oh, you don't have access to chat window. So just make sure you find this. Announcing Microsoft Fabric capacities available for purchase. Me here describes everything, including the pricing of all the aspects. There are 4 aspects of pricing in Fabric. Don't get wrong by just keeping in mind that there are capacities. So let me list those factors for you. So number 1, yes, you need the capacity. So either P or F capacity. Number 2, you pay for storage. The price is below. I believe it's $0.023 per gigabyte per something. So I will just check in a second. 3, if you go and download data from your OneLake or move data between different Azure regions, if you have multi-regional OneLake, there is an egress payment.
Yes,
right?
Like in blob storage, the same.
Exactly, just like in Azure. And number 4, you still need to pay for Power BI licenses if you create anything related to Power BI that is not based on default data sets. Tricky part. If you go and create a report
Default,
based on default data set, no Power BI license. But if you create a custom data set and anything beyond, you need Power BI license, Pro or Premium per user. Just as with Power BI Premium, that's nothing different. So let's scroll down to see the cost of the storage. It's here, gigabytes per month, right? That's pretty much it. Okay. Again, it's we don't want the OneLake to become free of payment storage for people keeping videos or anything, right? So that's typical. So I hope this answers the question.
Yes, and at some point in your beautiful demo, let's go to say, it was so nice. Yes, you show how to access from Databricks to OneLake using Azure Active Authentication with the checkbox of pass-through. This checkbox is making that you as a person delegate your permission, or is using the permissions of the person.
You are using the identity of the person. You are using the identity of the person who runs the notebook, who uses the cluster right now. No, runs the notebook. Runs the notebook execution.
I thought that there was always the person who created the Azure Databricks workspace.
So I don't want to make wrong statement. I think it's for the person who runs the notebook. Otherwise, it would make no sense. But yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
You may verify it easily. Just create several users in your Fabric environment, in your Fabric tenant, and go against OneLake with Databricks by just checking with 2 users, right? It's again, it's
I don't know. Years ago was the person who created the Databricks workspace, and then this have no sense. If they change this, yes, I can try.
My opinion, you just have to go to actually Databricks documentation to verify that, because let's go to this window. Boom. Well, now you probably will use Unity catalog, but the simplest way to demonstrate was to select this option. This option is not the best one because it narrows the number of languages in the notebooks, etc. But let me just try and find blah blah blah. Here, this is the identity that you use to log into Databricks. So the person who actually executes the code on the cluster.
Oh, nice.
Right? But again, this option is legacy. So if you work with Databricks, pay attention to what they advise about Unity catalog, etc. Also, you may use service principals, I believe. So still, you don't have to grant access to the workspace only to users, but also to technical accounts that you create in Azure. It's not prohibited. You still can go and have technical accounts running some jobs or whatever you need.
Okay, and my last question is about money. Let's go to be clear again, because this is the first step. If you buy one F1, that is 60.
F2 is the lowest.
Yes, yes. You can use the 24-hour all queries that you want, or
so the tricky part is this. Right now, those capacity levels, they handle only Power BI workload. We will start counting all the experiences, all the workloads. They will start billing to the capacity units starting on October. So you still have 1 month to freely test it, and you will see no difference between F2, F4, F64, honestly, until you will create a bunch of Power BI items. But if you could create lake houses, warehouses, there should be no difference, and people report, hey, I see no difference in speed of queries for F2 and F64. That's how it is right now. Again, there's another blog post from me here on that. Sorry.
Okay.
We are clear. We say it loudly. It's not hidden truth. We just say, hey, right now you will not find any workloads knocking to your capacities other than Power BI. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much for all your answers and
Welcome.
for your demos, of course.
Thanks. Any other questions?
Yep. The chat section. Oh, sorry. The chat section is open now. I believe it was open before as well. But if you wanted to post something, feel free.
Thank you all for kind words in the chat window. I try to do my best to make OneLake as easy as possible for everyone. Actually, Josh Kaplan does it much better than me because he's the originator and the PM manager sitting behind this feature. But I just think that OneLake is one of the crucial parts of Fabric, so that's why I often present on this feature.
We all are waiting for one security.
Yeah, I know. me either. Keep your fingers crossed to have it soon and be able to test it before GA, right?
Cool. With that, we'll just wrap up. It's definitely a really good and insightful session. And we can definitely see that OneLake is solving a lot of fragmented data problems in the companies that usually have. Just for the attendees, our next session is planned as an offline event. So stay tuned for more details. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
Have a great offline event. See you. Thank you very much for your
Bye.
invitation. See you.